hour. Sorry,
And
Sam,
second hour.
we had a bet going. It's Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, gentlemen. How we doing?
You know.
How are you doing? It's a busy time for you.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I just can't skip past the fact that Dave just publicly admitted that he keeps in touch with his exes while his wife could be listening. What is wrong?
I didn't say I keep in touch. I said Facebook's a hell of an app. You know, I see every once in a while they pop up. I go, oh, okay, sucker. Sam, I can tell you how busy Sam was. I won't get into it because our off-air conversations are private. I was telling Sam a very intricate and interesting story about an experience I had in the UK yesterday, and he was all like, oh, I got to take another phone call, and completely interrupted me. And I get it. This time of year, I forgive him for stuff like that. Sam, no hard feelings.
I mean, I just hadn't paid the electrical bill, and they were chasing me down. You know, what are you going to do?
Always.
Go ahead.
Well, no, it's been nuts. I said to someone yesterday, I don't know if it's recency bias, but the fireworks the fireworks show is longer than normal this year at the trade deadline. I mean, you're just talking about massive names on the move. So, and honestly, from the shocker of Luka, which nobody saw coming, to the Jimmy stuff that we saw coming but didn't see necessarily coming, in this direction. It's been a lot, but it's been fun.
Well, let's go with the one that was kind of public, right? We talked about last week with De'Aaron Fox ultimately was traded. Your thoughts on kind of ultimately how we ended up here officially and how the Kings did out of all of this?
Man, we'll see. I mean, it's, the package itself, I think there's good sides to it. And the Levine is a very good player. You got to kind of wipe yesterday's game out of the memory banks when you talk about adjusting and getting to town. I know he talked about having been rusty. But the bigger picture is not great. I mean, they might compete for a playoff spot this year. I went to Monty's press conference yesterday morning, and it's, we don't have to rehash all the old stuff that we've talked about ad nauseum, but it's, I will a little bit because it's their fault because they didn't hold a press conference for 41 days. I've never seen an organization hold two press conferences and schedule two press conferences with a GM in the same day. I mean, the email might as well have said, hey, we know you're going to talk about the not fun stuff, so come in the morning to do that, and then come say hi to Zach LaVine midday. That was clearly the structure. And Monty, I mean, he tried his best to answer the questions, but was not enjoying that press conference clearly, and made for a kind of a strange day.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Monty's been getting a lot of stick for it, but I also felt like it was almost a ransom video up there. I felt bad for him at one point because it just seemed like there were other powers at play. And it's a difficult position to go up and be a bullet sponge, if you will, for the media, who I thought did a great job. You were there. Sam, I'll ask you. You've had a long time to think about it. You've covered this team forever. Have you come to a conclusion in your mind, your best guess as to why they didn't have a press conference, why they waited until yesterday?
I couldn't agree with you more about the ransom component. I wrote at the time that Vivek made this decision. Trusted that information at the time, since had that information confirmed even more. Now owners don't, they do sometimes do press conferences. I think we've talked about how Mark Cuban used to jump on the elliptical before every game and talk to reporters. That's one end of the spectrum. James Dolan, I'm not sure he's a real person. We haven't seen him in 50 years, So the league does not require owners to talk, but I still am of the opinion that whether it's a press conference or just simply doing some local media, and I say local because, as you guys know, with me, it's trying to just find out what's going on. I think Vivek should have been the one talking. And I do think there were a lot of forces at work leading to Monty having to grab the microphone, and he was asked a couple times about who made the decision on Mike Brown. But the second time, when, credit to Chris Biederman from the B for asking very directly, can you, definitively say who made the decision? And it was just this, yeah, me. And then just sprinting to the next question. So yeah, it was crunchy. And then, it probably would have helped the mood for them and the optics if the game went better, but then it obviously was crunchy later too.
I know it was a matter of timing. I thought the same thing. Not if the game was better, that would have helped. But even if they had just said, "Oh, and by the way, we've just traded for Jonas Valanciunas," which seemed to be a popular move of the day, it just was timing wasn't on their side at that time.
Yeah, and Dave, I didn't really answer your question. No, I don't know why they didn't do it. And I don't feel guilty continuing to highlight this because I know damn near every PR person in the league and have not run into one who thinks that it was handled well. So it's the type of thing that somebody else in their questions to Monty also rightfully pointed out. This is not just media bitching, if you will. I hope that's not an FCC violation.
You're fine.
But like it's legitimately part of the situation with De'Aaron Fox. So that, so anybody who wants to say stop whining, like shift your focus to the player who decided to push his way out of town. There was a pattern of the organization not finding a way to make that player feel supported when it came to public controversy. And this was one of those times.
And I'll it's funny you say that because, and full disclosure, we didn't talk about this before, but we just basically had this in a segment before you came on where it's a difficult truth to face. And I can promise you're going to get people in the YouTube comments when this thing is posted. There are just, and right or wrong, there are fans that, look, De'Aaron Fox is gone. He screwed us on the way out. Oh, let's move on. Why are you taking up for him? And my point, and I think it's your point here, we're on the same page, is that it is incredibly important to look at the big picture in the way the franchise runs itself behind the scenes. And you had a homegrown star that the idea of him being disgruntled and wanting to leave and forcing his way out. Well, technically that's true in a vacuum. He was disgruntled and he wanted out, and he de facto forced his way out with Rich Paul and poisoned the well for the team he wanted to go to. That's all inarguable, I think. But if we don't, as media, and I think really also as fans, also acknowledge that there was a series of events that led to this, that ultimately he did want to be here. He did want to sign that contract. He gave them ample opportunities. And whether it's the media boycott last year, whether it was the Mike Brown situation this year and the no press conference, whether it was the lack of adding this, that, and whatever around him, which is the same thing fans have been screaming for, it ultimately led to this decision. If we don't acknowledge that, we're just going to repeat it in another 2-3 years. And are we on the same page there?
100%. And I'll add to it by saying this is what, fans who kind of like the trade and who just want to move on, this is going to irritate them. In my opinion, Zach LaVine is not part of the Kings' long-term future. Yes, he has a couple years left on his deal. He's not a foundational piece, for a team that is aspiring to actually contend. And De'Aaron Fox was supposed to be that. And you talk about the stakes at play here. Let's not forget, as Luka gets traded to the Lakers, that when Vlade Divac made the ill-fated decision not to draft Luka, the number one justification was his belief in De'Aaron Fox.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that he didn't love the idea not only of them playing together, but that his, insight, his intel was that Fox was going to probably not want to play with Luka, and that he believed that he would have to trade De'Aaron if he drafted Luka. The point is, you just look at all that has been invested regarding regarding this player and the direction they went down with Fox as the driving force. And so to have it end like this is pretty disastrous for an organization that now at best is going to scratch and claw to be in the middle, which is exactly what Fox didn't want.
Sam, last week, I think when we were talking about this situation, you and others had all kind of thought there was still a chance that maybe he did make it through the deadline and this could be revisited in the summer and Fox would approach this professionally. We all expected that. But Monty, the one thing that stuck out to me, and you were there and maybe would have a better read on it, the one thing he did mention yesterday multiple times was seemingly a bit agitated that this whole thing became public. And do you think the public nature of this kind of forced this to be done, I guess, by the deadline here for the Kings?
Maybe. The point he was making, I think, is that some of this stuff is just what's the word I'm looking for? Like transactional context. So every time De'Aaron and his agent Rich Paul would decline an extension, then that is a very, very formal sign to the team that he's not ready to commit long term. I'm just stating the obvious there. And then you have, that stuff would become public, but that's not. I mean, honestly, I remember when it first got reported that he turned down the extension, and and I was the first one to start telling people this is not just about trying to get the supermax. This is not just financially driven. This is him reading the room. That is when the public stuff starts to change the mood a little bit, because if you're the Kings, it's like, hey, if you tell the fans that, hey, it's just a better business decision for me to wait, and then but don't worry, we'll figure it out eventually, then the pressure doesn't rise. Yes, the pressure started to rise when and again, this is in the category of don't kill the messenger in the media, like when his people decided to kind of rise the temperature, and that's what they did. I mean, it's messy. It happens all the time in the NBA. You have to manage it. This is a grand example, but Kobe Bryant was jumping on the radio in LA and telling Stephen A. Smith and anybody who would listen that he wanted out of LA. He wanted out. And, they held firm and went and got Pau Gasol. And then Kobe was there, so it gets messy sometimes. But that doesn't mean you have to fold. I'm still a little bit surprised that they didn't try to push this to the summer, and I have learned that I think it was pretty, I don't know if toxic is too strong, but it was not great in the locker room. The players were pretty frustrated by, how this had escalated so quickly. So I think that did play a part, but yeah, I mean, it's, again, it's not a great conclusion.
Sam, what, if any, thing are you hearing about, Monty was asked a couple times, different versions of how much autonomy do you have? What are you hearing, if anything, about influence from above? Is that front office Monty, Wes, and friends, or and if so, how involved are those above Monty's pay grade?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's plenty of signs of good old Kangs, if you will. Again, stuff that I know triggers the fans, like when it comes to the Palace intrigue and the power games that are going on, I think. But again, you could cut through a lot of that if Vivek would actually talk and tell people how things are functioning, and he's not doing that. I remember a game a couple of weeks ago. They won a game, and it was after they obviously chose not to have a press conference. And I think he's got somebody who does his own social media, and it was I see him get up from the courtside seat and walk over to the beam to take part in the whole beam thing, and he's got he's making sure that somebody's videotaping him for his social so that he can be out there and be visible in a positive moment. Well, that's not leadership as an owner. Like, you got to actually be around for the negative stuff too. So if he would talk, I mean, maybe it's because he knows that the truth is that things are messy and he doesn't want to talk about that. I mean, yeah, I think this front office is under a lot of pressure. These are moves, and this is outside perspective where, like, again, in a vacuum, I'm not, the transaction itself was pretty good. It could have been worse. They got some stuff, you know what I mean? But it's also the idea that to continue to be competitive, fight for the playoff spot, short-term solutions, I guess I'll put it this way. I wouldn't blame this front office if a factor in their minds was obviously I would like to stay employed.
Yeah.
And that's just not the best ecosystem, but that falls at Vivek's feet.
Earlier, Sam, when you talked about, the transaction that actually was made, getting Zach LaVine, that's not the, foundational piece like that Fox had was or had the potential to be going forward. Don't you feel like now that they've dealt Fox, they're really trying to find the next guy like De'Aaron Fox? And I don't know if that's with picks or if with a trade deadline. I mean, I'm sure that's not happening today, but aren't they kind of now back in that cycle trying to find another franchise piece?
For sure. And I just pulled up their salaries just to make sure I don't misspeak. I mean, Zach can opt out, not this coming summer, but the summer after that. So we talk about short-term, that's short-term. Domas is a foundational piece. And I think it was wise of them, and I give them credit to go get Jonas Valanciunas, because I think that Domas was, already a little grumpy about how this had gone down. And that's another thing that all of a sudden, and this is not a now thing. It's just you better make sure the big fella is okay, because he's the only dude you like, elite player you have who is signed long-term through the summer of 28. The other part where it gets tricky, you sign Malik Monk up long-term. They got a decision to make on Keegan Murray this summer, but DeMar DeRozan represents, and this to me, I don't see anything happening there today, but it kind of reflects the pickle that they put themselves in, meaning when they got him to sign here at the time, it was another positive sign and reflection of some of the stability it seemed like they had been pushing towards, and he felt comfortable enough to come to SAC, and he chose them, you know what I mean? And obviously they paid him more than he could get anywhere else. But now, like, there's an argument to be made that in pursuit of that foundational piece or something, different, that they should move DeMar now and start pivoting even more. I had heard some stuff yesterday. I thought that might be happening, was told that was not the case. So, that's the latest intel for now, but we'll see what they do. I mean, again, it's tricky for me because I do think highly and respect of Monty and Wes both. I think they're respected executives who they've got different styles. I mean, obviously it's not a real secret. I think Monty is the front facing guy we saw yesterday. It's just not necessarily his strength. But they do know what they're doing. But there's just a lot happening here. Excuse me.
I think the DeRozan thing's fascinating, Sam, because you do hear whispers, and I would imagine, I would imagine his representation is probably, if that is the case, reminding the Kings that they've already damaged their league-wide reputation between Fox and Brown lately, and to take a guy who has a tremendous amount of respect around the league and a limited amount of time left in his career, and to send him to I'm just throwing teams out, but Utah, Washington, a team that is in the middle of a rebuild that actually have some players that might be attractive to the Kings. That's probably not going to do anything for their reputation. That leads to my question is, do you think that's an internal conversation going on if DeMar's name comes up, in addition to value for value? Also, we may need to be a bit careful if we were to send him somewhere, because we don't want to completely trash ourselves publicly.
Yeah, I do think it's a consideration. There's always this informal thing happening between organizations and their relationships with the different agencies. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Clutch Sports and Rich, that's the De'Aaron Fox. And I'm trying to think, if any other players are represented by him on this team.
Isn't Levine?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you. Yeah. The new guy.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Him.
You're making my point for me, which is
right.
That, and I did check in on this after the trade. Like, even with all the drama, the assertion is that, like, Clutch and the Kings are okay. You know what I mean? Which sounds probably surprising to fans, but the business relationship, that bridge is not broken. They're burned. DeMar is represented by Aaron Goodwin, longtime, prominent, powerful agent who, honestly, even beyond his own client list, he was LeBron James's first agent. He had Kevin Durant.
Chris Webber's former agent, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. He's been around. I mean, he lives in the Bay and he's prominent. I mean, he's been very tied in with the Kings for a very long time, going back to the Jeff Petrie days, and is a very respected guy. And the point is that it's one of those guys where if you do wrong by DeMar, I actually think that it extends well beyond his client list. Like, it was one of those, every prominent player in the game will listen to what he says. And so you got to be careful with that. So, yeah, I mean, these are some of the dynamics at play right now.
I do want to ask Sam, I know we've just got a few moments left, but
sorry.
Wow. Dave nearly exploded.
Dave, one more time. Dave,
oh my God. I swallowed my coffee wrong. I'm so sorry, everybody. Go ahead.
Obviously the biggest shocker was the Luka and Lakers deal. just from, I mean, content wise, it's absolutely amazing. But just the inner workings, how that really came out of nowhere, the very, very public nature of what Nico Harrison had to say about Luka and all that. Just your overall perception, what others are saying about not necessarily even the deal, but just Dallas doing that one and what it cost Luka and kind of what they said about him during this whole thing.
No, it was crazy. This is more a Sacramento filter and a view, but I was just mad that, if Luka was going to be available, like you talk about tying a bow on a storyline, De'Aaron Fox for Luka Doncic, like that.
Yeah,
Look at you.
yeah, let's go. Oh.
That you might have shut me up when it comes to all this other stuff we're talking about. But no, it was a total stunner. I mean, honestly, that there's the storyline with the Lakers, and I need to write some of this stuff more than I have. It just blows me away. Like the Kobe Bryant tie-ins here, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll make the point is, Nico Harrison was Kobe's Nike rep for a long time. He knew Kobe as well as anybody. That's the GM of the Mavs. Rob Pelinka, GM of the Lakers, was Kobe's agent for most of his career. Knew Kobe as well as anybody, was a dear friend. It just cracks me up that the fabric of this trade is one person who knew Kobe better than anybody deciding that Luka Doncic did not have the Mamba mentality, and the other person saying, I hear you, but give him to me anyway. We're going to be fine.
And the same guy who nailed the Steph Curry presentation for Nike.
Well, yes, man, you were just taking your shot today.
Sorry.
That one, yes. Nico Harrison famously botched the Nike presentation for Steph. Misspelled his name. Yes.
Yeah.
He's taking hits right now, and we'll see. I mean, it does look crazy. The Luka stuff, I'm just dying to see what Luka's resume looks like at 35. That's it. Because guys, again, I know we're short on time. I've never watched a player in the finals last year. I would find myself going, oh my God, he just went for 38. I don't remember, but 38, 12, and 20, 15, whatever. And then you'd be like, but on the court, it looks like the big fat guy at the pickup game who can't move very well, and
Right.
And I remember he had this wrap around his left knee, and it was the weirdest thing. He had blood coming out of the wrap all the time. Like he literally had like a blood stain. So you have this image of this battered and bruised body, but then he's an absolute basketball genius. So, we'll see who ended up making the mistake here.
Well, and just the way we were talking about a couple segments ago, Sam, like how badly do you have to dislike Luka Doncic, your franchise player that took you to the finals, when you basically traded him out of the blue, cost him over $100 million, sent him from no state tax to state tax, and then on top of that leaked out that he was an insufferable fatty who didn't care about, like they bulldozed. Yeah, they slaughtered him, Sam.
I shouldn't make light of this, but I just thought, if he wasn't MAGA before, man, he's coming to California.
Dude,
like, man, this thing sucks.
He's so pissed. and then like everything you said was 100% accurate. And God, I wish we had another hour, because you go back to, you had the conversation, I had the conversation with Vlade Divac. You mentioned it earlier about Fox, but him saying, I've known Luka since he was, I'm not going to do a Vlade here. I've known Luka since he was 11. I know about the drinking. I know about the partying. I know about the lack of him being in shape. And I won't go into this part, and people can jump to their own conclusions, but Vlade's best friend was Luka's dad, and Luka's dad had his own set of struggles. And you go all the way back now to Vlade's justification not drafting, which of course was a mistake, but you bring that full forward now. And, oh, by the way, Luka Doncic led the league in minutes counting the playoffs last year. So he might be a partying, drinking fat boy, but somehow, as you said, he's a genius. He makes it work so far.
Yeah, no, I don't. That's well said. It's going to be incredible to watch. And I'm
okay. Well, we'll leave this way, Sam. If you were to describe Luka Doncic in 3 words, would it be accurate to describe him as having a cushy poker player build?
That's 4
words.
Have you ever said that before about anybody?
It's a turn of phrase. It's very poetic. It sounds like something Sam would say about somebody.
Yeah, baby. That was the best story I've ever written.
I agree.
my mom still has it in a scrapbook. So thank you for that every
Love
single
it.
time.
Love it.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Know it's a busy day for you. And you can follow Sam online. Also subscribe to The Athletic. They've got all your trade deadline coverage up to the minute with phenomenal sources and also some great behind the scenes stuff. As always, Sam, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That's Sam Amick. We'll take a break. When we come back, hey, the Kings added Jonas Valanciunas. At least that's what